they going to stop?
She's not going to stop.
Oh, okay.
Well, she said she wasn't.
Last week we left off Numbers 22. That was the story of Balaam and the donkey. Balak is involved, but Balak is the king. So this week, with just a little quick refresh, Balaam was a prophet, and he was a prophet for hire, basically, if you want to talk about it that way. And Balak asked him to come and curse Israel. Israel had stopped on the borders there of where Balaam was the king, and he was scared of them. He had heard what had happened before, that they, already conquered a couple of the people, a couple of the areas, and he was concerned about that. So he wanted to hopefully sway God, or sway his God, his gods, so that Balak could bless them. Because in last week it says, I know who you bless is blessed and who you curse is cursed. But we never did get past that. He tried, and finally the last time, the third time, God will limit the second time, told him to go with the guys, and then he told him, only speak what I tell you to speak. So we're starting in Numbers 23, verse 1 through 3 here. So he gets to Balaam. Balaam came out to meet him. Balaam said to Balak, build 7 altars for me here, and prepare for me here 7 bulls and 7 rams. And Balak did just as Balaam had spoken. And Balak and Balaam offered a bull and a ram on each altar. Then Balaam said to Balak, stand by your burnt offering, and I will go. Perhaps the Lord will come to meet me, and whatever he shows me, I will tell you. So he went to a desolate height. So he went away from him. Now, he'd already told them last week. He told Balaam, okay, I can only do what God tells me to do. That was about the most truthful he'd ever gotten, talking to Balak. He didn't really tell him the whole story, that I'm sure that God had told him no the first time, or the second time, or the third time he finally relented. And so he went ahead and told him. So he didn't tell him that, but he went ahead and told Balak. He arrived, and Balak wanted him to go ahead and set up this offering and, curse the God. So these offerings were to the offerings of their gods. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. 4 through 6, Brother Emerson.
And God met Balaam and said to him, I have prepared the 7 altars, and I have offered on each altar a bull and ram. Then the Lord put a word in Balaam's mouth. He said, return to Balaam, and thus you shall speak. So he returned to him, and there he was standing at his burnt offering, and he and all the princes of Moab.
So he went off to consult God, or at least looked like he was going to consult God, and God met him there. Now, this is a story that's passed down through Moses. So sometimes these things are kind of, you hear what happens. It may not be exactly what actually happened. He's hearing it from God. May have told him, that Balak had wanted to wipe them out. I don't know, but somehow this came across. So he met with Balaam, and Balaam told him, hey, I prepared 7 altars here, and offered a sacrifice on each altar, a bull and ram. Now to us, that's like, why 7? Israelites only offer one. They have one altar, and they make a sacrifice on one altar. Well, like I said, there are several gods in there. 7 is a number that's known in God's time and other people as a perfect number. So they think that, well, that's a great number. And again, he's trying to emphasize to Balak, I'm doing what I told you to go do this, build 7 altars, and we're going to make the sacrifices. So it's not cheap what he's asking him to do. You have to provide for 7 bulls, 7 rams, and to provide the stones, build the altars, and get the firewood, and all this stuff. So it says we might be surprised that God spoke to and through someone as obviously wicked as Balaam. But this shows us that spiritual giftedness does not equal spiritual maturity or holiness of life. God spoke through a donkey in the previous chapter, and now he spoke through a bigger donkey. So, that's right. That's kind of cute, I thought. So when he returned, Balaam returned, Balak and all the princes of Moab were ready. They were ready to learn what their money had bought them from Balaam. So they were all anticipating, okay, what's the good stuff? What's going to happen? What are you going to do? Oh, 7 through 10, Iris?
And he took up his oracle and said, Balak, the king of Moab, has brought me from Aram, from the mountains of the east. Come, curse Jacob for me, and come, denounce Israel. How shall I curse whom God has not cursed? And how shall I denounce whom the Lord has not denounced? For from the top of the rocks I see him, and from the hills I behold him. There, a people dwelling alone, not reckoning itself among the nations. Who can count the dust of Jacob, or number 1/4 of Israel? Let me die the death of the righteous, and let my end be like his.
Okay. So, this is what God told him to say. He told him, pronounce only what I pronounce. So this is what he told Balak. Balak was just ready, at any time to go ahead and see what was going on. But he told him, how can I denounce Israel? How can I curse somebody that God's told me not to curse? He didn't, that God has not cursed. He didn't tell them that he hadn't cursed. So, how shall I denounce the Lord when he is not denounced? He sees him and he's saying, there's people dwelling there. It's a large number of people. The dust of Jacob. And that means there's a lot of people. And like we said, if you take 2.5 million people and let them grow over 40 years, and then kind of the natural attrition of all those under 40, you may still be 2.5 million, you may be, who knows, 4 million, 5 million. I don't know how many people there was at the time, but the fighting men, there was probably about 2.5 million fighting. We can go back and all the counts that they had earlier in numbers, we can kind of see how many they had. They had a big army. And Balak is, well, we'll see what he says here in a minute. But Balaam said, let me die the death of the righteous and let my end be like his. So he's actually saying, I want to die the way these guys are going to die. Because they're not going to die today. He's basically saying that these guys, you're not going to be able to overcome them. You're not going to wipe them out. Okay, 11 and 12, Bertha?
Then Balak said to Balaam, what have you done to me? I took you to curse my enemies, and look, you have blessed them bountifully. So he answered and said, must I not take heed to speak what the Lord has put in my mouth?
So it's just exactly what we had said before, that there's nothing that, I can't speak. I already told you I can't say anything except what the Lord would say. So Balak, he was kind of upset a little bit. But he said here in the next verse, then Balak said to him, please come with me to another place from which you may see them. You shall see only the outer part of them. He had taken them to a place that they could look out and see all, almost all of Judah, or all of the tribes. So now he's going to take them out and just see the very edge of them. So he takes them to another place, and he's just seeing the outer part of them. And said, curse them for me from there. So he brought him to the field of Zophim, to the top of Pisgah, and built 7 altars, and offered a bull and ram on each altar. And he said to Balak, stand here by your burnt offering while I meet the Lord over there. Then the Lord met Balaam and put a word in his mouth and said, go back to Balak, and thus you shall speak. So he came to him, and there he was, standing by his burnt offering, and the princes of Moab were with him. And Balak said to him, what has the Lord spoken? Now Balak thought maybe changing the venue, where you don't see everything, maybe he'll be able to bless just this backside. Maybe we can attack this backside, and create some havoc or something. We don't exactly know what his thought pattern was for that, but just maybe I can change God's mind if I do this again. I'll offer him another 7 sacrifices and all this. And that's not what happened. Okay, we haven't seen that yet, but that's not what happened. Okay, 18 through 24, Brother Emerson.
He took up his oracle and said, rise up and hear. Listen to me, son of Zipporah. God is not a man that he should lie, or a son of man that he should repent. Has he said, and will he not do? Or has he spoken, and will he not make it good? Behold, I've received a command to bless. He has blessed, and I cannot reverse it. He has not observed iniquity in Jacob, nor has he seen wickedness in Israel. The Lord his God is with him, and the shout of a king is among the God who brings them out of Egypt. He has strength like a wild ox, for there is no sorcery against Jacob, or any deviation against Israel. It now must be said of Jacob and of Israel, oh, what God has done. Look, a people rises like a lioness and lifts himself up like a lion. He shall not lie down until he devours the prey, and drinks the blood of the slain.
Okay. So this is the word that he brought back to Balak. Gets even more. Puts the fear in Balak even more. That I thought you were going to do all this stuff, curse them, and all you're doing is blessing them. And he said, I'm just telling you the facts. Look at this. This is what God told me. Now, in one place down there at the bottom, the shout of a king is among them. There wasn't any king right then, but there would be. Okay? There would be coming. And it's not just an earthly king, it's going to be a heavenly king, in the future. But right down there, he has a strength. Some places it reads like a unicorn. Okay? We've heard that time and again. What does we think of a unicorn like a horse with a horn? Well, what animal has one horn and is strong? A rhinoceros.
Yeah.
Could have been a rhinoceros. Could have been like a wild ox. We don't know, but boy, I would not want to get in front of a rhinoceros. They can't see very good, but boy, when they can smell good.
You make them angry.
That's right. That's what I understand. They can smell like crazy. I mean,
You think they can run?
and they are faster than they look.
They can chase you down, boy.
Sometimes them big old boys are faster than you think. Even talks here about, the lioness. People will rise up like a lioness. There's nothing that gets people more riled. Everybody talks about the king of the jungle's a lion. Well, it is, but it's the lionesses that usually do the killing. The lion sits there and roars, scares everybody to death, while the lioness is in the backside, driving them to where they need to go. So that's the way he heard it rise up, and Balak did not like that. He was like, okay, this is the second time. This is the second prophecy that happened, and he's not liking it at all. This is not turning out the way I wanted it at all. Said God also taught Balak about the people of God, Israel. He taught them that they were blessed, that they were walking in purity, that God was with Israel and brought them out of Egypt and protected them against all sorcery and divination, that he would see them through to victory. He's not lying. There's still a lot of dissent down there, but they're not doing idols. They're not doing all these things. They are following God. So he's going to follow them. He's already said they're my people. They're the ones that I'm going to be with. Here it talks about, there's 9 times in the Old Testament that the Hebrew word reem, R-E-E-M, which in the King James Version is translated unicorn. In the New King James, it's the strong ox. But it also could be, like we said, a rhinoceros. Could be a strong goat. Anything like these could be. Because, we think as a unicorn, it's the way I said. That's the connotation, the definition that we've seen, and that's not. So far, we've never found one, so don't think it's there. Iris, 25 and 26.
Then Balak said to Balaam, neither curse them at all, nor bless them at all. So Balaam answered and said to Balak, did I not tell you, saying, all that the Lord speaks, that I must do?
He said, you're not getting this, are you? I told you I would talk to God, and he did. God tells me what to say, and that's what I say. So he said, don't bless them. Don't do this, don't do that. He's trying to get something out of him. So we move on to 24. So he takes him to another place. Okay? Bertha, 27.
Then Balak said to Balaam, please come, I will take you to another place. Perhaps I will plead. Perhaps it will please God that you may curse him for being from there. So Balak took Balaam to the top of Peor that overlooks the wasteland. Then Balaam said to Balak, build for me here 7 altars, and prepare for me here 7 bulls and 7 rams. And Balak did as Balaam had said, and offered a bull and a ram on every altar. Now, when Balaam saw that it pleased the Lord to bless Israel, he did not go as at other times to seek to use sorcery, but he set his face toward the wilderness. And Balaam raised his eyes and saw Israel encamped according to their tribes, and the Spirit of God came upon them.
Okay. We see 2 times before, it talks about he took his oracle. We really don't know what that was, but it could have been his divination, tools, whatever, bones that he throws, or whatever it was. We don't know exactly, but he took his oracle to try to see what God would. But this time, he's beginning to get the picture. I'm talking to the real dude now. This is no messing around. And God, then he opened his eyes. He showed him what actually Israel was to him. And the Spirit of God came upon Balaam. Now, the other times it talks about he talked to him and told him, but this time the Spirit of God came upon him. Sometimes, and they talk about this in another commentary, that it's a lot like we see today. People get saved, but they don't continue on. They don't go on into the part of salvation where you have to be justified and sanctified, and then the Holy Ghost comes upon them, and they just revert back. And that's what they think is happening here, that he's seeing those things, and he's becoming a believer, but then he falls short, okay? Because he still sees the money sign, the dollar signs, that I could do all this if he wants, if I just do what the king wants. So he saw all Israel for how they were, and he talks about it here in a minute, how beautiful it is, because they are an army. They're set up, their tents are set up, we know they set them up in certain detail, certain, areas, and they were probably, I know when we were, nothing like them, but when we were in the Scouts, they wanted us to set our tents up and either set it around the campfire, so we had to be around. It couldn't just be anywhere we wanted. It had to be around, either make a U shape or make a circle or in a line, on one side. It had to do that, so whatever they wanted us to do, and that's the way the army is. They want to put you in order, okay? And I'm sure it was whether it was round or square, I don't know. 3 through 9. Then he took up his oracle. Here again, we don't know if that's his staff or whatever. But he said, the utterance of Balaam, the son of Beor, the utterance of the man whose eyes are opened, the utterance of him who hears the words of the Lord, who sees the vision of the Almighty, who falls down with his eyes wide open. How lovely are your tents, O Jacob, your dwellings, O Israel, like valleys that stretch out, like gardens by the riverside, like aloes planted by the Lord, like cedars beside the waters. He shall pour water from his buckets, and his seed shall be in many waters. His king shall be higher than Agag, and his kingdom shall be exalted. God brings him out of Egypt. He has a strength like a wild ox. He shall consume the nations, his enemies. He shall break their bones and pierce them with his arrows. He bows down, and he lies down as a lion. And as a lion, who shall rouse him? Blessed is he who blesses you, and cursed is he who curses you. So this is what came upon him while he was there with Balak. And he's hearing this from Balaam's mouth, what he's talking with. And like I said, they're reviewing all this. He's reviewing what it looks like to him and to the people out there. Said each of the first 3 prophecies, it's gotten worse and worse for Balak. First one, Balak fails to curse Israel. Second, he blesses Israel. And in the third, he curses Balak. How much worse can it get for the king of Moab? He's saying you're going to be wiped out. Now, it doesn't say when. Okay, we're going to get to when in just a little bit. But he's saying that this people is going to overrun and take over whatever they want. Basically, whatever God tells them to do, they're going to take over. Okay, so then we go to Balak, 10 through 13, Brother Epperson.
Then Balak's anger was aroused against Balaam, and he struck his hands together. And Balak said to Balaam, I called you to curse my enemies, and look, you have bountifully blessed them these 3 times. Now therefore, flee to your place. I said I would greatly honor you, but in fact, the Lord has kept you back from honor. So Balaam said to Balak, did I not also speak to your messengers, whom you sent to me, saying, if Balak were to give me his house full of silver and gold, I could not go beyond the word of the Lord, to do good or bad of my own will. But the Lord says, that I must speak.
So this time he's about as true as he can be. I mean, he's talking. He wasn't, at that time, still hoping to get anything. Balak's releasing him. He's saying, okay, you ticked me off. Get out of here. I'm not paying you a red penny. He's already, built these 3 altars, or 21 altars, and 21 rams, and 21 bulls. He's out a lot of money just for that. So he's not going to pay him anything. And he said, I brought you here to curse them, and now all you've done is got me in trouble, basically. But Balaam said what was truthful. I told you when I started this. This is, I can only do what God told me to do. It was truthful, but it wasn't what he wanted. Balaam, okay? He wanted to get some money. Balaam tried his best to excuse himself and to blame God, but he knew that his heart's desire would be a big paycheck would not be fulfilled. Because he failed to please his employer. Perhaps at that moment, Balaam saw the greater wisdom of God in telling him not to go, because now it seemed the whole trip was a big waste and Balaam would not get his money. If he was a big enough king, not scared of Balaam, he probably would have lost his head. But he's still scared because he's already cursed him a little bit, but he could curse him a lot. So we don't finish with that. We continue on 24:14. Is it Iris?
And now indeed I am going to my people. Come, I will advise you what this people will do to your people in the latter days.
So he said, okay, God told me a little secret here. he had told him that they're going to wipe everybody out. But he said, let me tell you what they're going to do. He said there was no preparation needed for this prophecy. Balak was not going to pay Balaam. Balaam would get back at him with a free prophecy, one that would show just how blessed Israel will be, both now and in the latter days.
The oracle, according to the next 15:24, seems like it's a tool.
Yeah, it's a tool. It's either his staff or, like I said, some utensil that he was using
to make these altars.
Yeah. So go ahead and read that for us, Bertha.
So he took up his oracle and said, the utterance of Balaam and the son of Beer, and the utterance of a man whose eyes are open, the utterance of him who hears the words of God and has the knowledge of the Most High, who sees the vision of the Almighty, who falls down with eyes wide open. I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star shall come out of Jacob, a sepulchre shall rise out of Israel, and batter the brow of Moab, and destroy all the sons of tumult. And Eden shall be a possession. Seir also his enemies shall be possession, while Israel does calamity out of Jacob. One shall have dominion and destroy the remains of the city. Then he looked on Amalek and destroyed him, and he took up his oracle and said, Amalek was first among the nations, but shall be last until he perishes. Then he looked on to Kindness, and he took up his oracle and said, firm is your dwelling place, and your nest is set in the rock. Nevertheless, Canaan shall be burned. How long? Until Azra carried his away captive. Then he took up his oracle and said, alas, who shall live when God does this? But ships shall come from the coast of Cyprus, and they shall afflict Azra and afflict Eber, and so shall Amalek until he perishes.
Okay? So this is a prophecy, and it's amazing prophecy. Okay?
I see him, but not now.
Oh, that's it. That's the end of the scripture.
That was making it really hard to pronounce.
This passage is a beautiful prophecy of the coming Messiah. Okay? The scepter and the star. Even that, it's talking about David, and it's also talking about Jesus too, coming out. Balaam could see him, but not now. It's not going to be now. Jesus is here prophetically called a star and a scepter. He is glorious like a star, and he has all the authority to rule, as pictured by a scepter, and battering the brow of Moab and destroy all the nations of all the sons of tumult. The Messiah will eventually rule over all nations that surround Israel. Here God spoke about the neighboring nations of Israel, Moab, Edom, Amalek, and the Kenites, and their future through Balaam. Kenites was the one that was kind of up in Engedi, just north, or just, is it north or south? I think it's just north of the Dead Sea, where they found a lot of the Dead Sea Scrolls up in that area. And I can tell you that's a very rough area, very hilly. The Kenites, the people didn't go after them because they were too hard. Their place was well defended. Herod built his fort down there in that area, Masada. Ever heard of that? It's up on the top of a plateau, way high. The Romans took like 3 years to finally, get the Israelites out of that city. But it talks about here that they're going to rule over their Kenites. I mean, he's going to rule over everybody. Well, the ships that are coming from Greece, okay, that's Alexander the Great. They're going to come, and that's what he did. He came and he basically conquered the world.
Wow.
He conquered all this area, just like they said. He conquered the Assyrians, he conquered the Babylonians, he conquered everybody over there until he died, and then who came after him? The Romans. And they came from the sea also. Italy and Greece, in that Sicily area, those people had a lot of ships, and they were coming, and they were a massive army that took over. So you can see that's not only down through Jesus' time, but well past his time. The Romans ruled for a long time. So they're going to batter even the Agag and the Moabites. They are going to get wiped out. Agag was the king of that area. He was probably the biggest king around. And even him, they were going to take over.
Down on the last page on B,
Mm-hmm.
I just read that and I thought, what does that think you of nowadays? The battle over in Israel.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The war over in Israel.
It's exactly like that.
Yeah.
And it's going to be in the end time. Right now, it's going to be just those countries around Israel. But in the end time, after the rapture, during the 7 years tribulation, all countries are going to, the Antichrist is going to have all countries attacking Israel. Try to get everybody to attack Israel. And God's going to say, nope, that's enough.
We're
Time
done
to
round
the
one.
end.
You're done.
That's right.
No, I just read that and I thought, wow, that's just parallel to what we're doing right now.
So verse 25 says, so Balaam rose and departed and returned to his place. Balak also went his way. So they split and went back to their countries, and it was just like he said. They didn't attack Balak. They didn't do anything like that until later. But they were ready for battle, but Balak did not want to go in there half-hearted. He got cursed. Said, we must credit Balak for one thing. He knew where the strength of Israel was. He did not seek to defeat Israel through his military strategy or new weapons. He knew it was a spiritual battle. And if Israel won the spiritual battle, they would certainly win the military battle. We walk in the same awareness. If we did, we should walk in the same awareness. If we did, we would give more time and attention to building our spiritual strength and having a close walk with Jesus. We should not allow Balak to be more perceptive about spiritual things than we are. It's a very good lesson. It's like, why was this put into the middle of Numbers? Well, that's why. It's trying to show this was happening, and Israel didn't know anything about it right now. I mean, they're looking down and seeing it. But sometime God told this to Moses, and Moses wrote it down. Okay, that this happened. And as you go through the rest of the Old Testament and the New Testament, we see Balaam is referred to several times. And even Balak is referred to. And it talks about the wickedness. Even in Revelation, it talks about how this is going to turn out. Just like they said. And it refers back to Balaam and his wicked prophecy, his prophecies that he had. Because it's amazing how these things tie together. You know, everybody knows the story of the donkey, but they always stop there. But here we need to continue on and know that God was protecting them in supernatural ways that Israel at that particular time didn't know about at all. So.
I just thought that was so powerful in relation to today.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Well, it's 2 chapters, but it was 2 short ones. So we'll continue on next week with 24, 25, 26.